Okay, so good evening, everyone. Almost everybody is here. I think Sudhakar is not yet here, but we will start now. Let me share my screen. Okay, so I hope you are all able to see the screen, guys.
Yes, Abdul, we can able to see.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, guys, yesterday we had a brief tour of the web UI and what each tab is meant for. Okay, what all roles we have, what all roles can have access to which tabs. Like account admin can have access to history, I'm sorry, account and notification tab. Security admin can have access to accounts but not notification, and all the other cannot have access to account and notification and so on. And we saw what all we can create in databases, uh, how to import data sets from data marketplace, how to create warehouses, what are worksheets and all that, right? So yesterday Venkat had asked me a question like we were talking about concurrency, that when the queries are queued up, they are allocated to the different clusters in the warehouse. Okay, and if all the clusters within the warehouse are busy, so those queries will be queued. Okay, so that means queued means they will be basically waiting for the cluster in the warehouse to get free, so that they can get processed. So yeah, if you go to history, as I said yesterday, history will maintain the queries, last few queries that you have fired in the system. So there's a column called status here, you know so it has the various statuses of that query, whether it is running. Running means it is in progress, already allocated to a cluster in the warehouse and it is in progress. Succeeded means it has been completed, processing has been completed. Failed, obviously it did not complete. And this is the one queued. This option will show you that it is right now in the queue, and the cluster in the warehouse or that particular warehouse is yet to be assigned to that query. And blocked is something which we will see in the later classes, where we see how Snowflake treats those database properties. Every database has to comply with ACID properties, right? So you all have worked on databases and you know what ACID properties are, right? Atomicity, consistency, integrity, and what? Durability. So these ACID properties have, for being a database or data warehouse, you need to be compliant with such properties. So we will be looking at that in detail in the later sessions. But blocked means if a particular table is being deleted or updated, so those records on that particular table will be blocked till the time it is committed or till the time it is being processed. So another user or another session trying to access or update the same table or the same rows which are being deleted, for them that query will be blocked or it will go on hold basically. Okay, so that is what is a blocking status. But to answer Venkat's question, we can check from here that what all queries are queued. And this is from UI, but there is a system view also which Snowflake has provided, which you will see the same data like this only, which you are seeing on the web UI here through the history tab. There is a system view called query underscore history. So when we look at that, you will see that all this information can be provided from there also. You can get it from there also. Okay, but as of now, you can check it from here, from the web UI. Okay, so Venkat, I hope now that question that you were asked yesterday is you're okay with it, right?
Yes, yes, Abdul.
Okay, so moving forward, guys. Yesterday we had stopped at the warehouses. We were doing a deep dive of warehouses, and I had created one. Uh, this is a default warehouse, guys, which you get when you create your accounts in Snowflake. Okay, so every one of you, if you go to this tab warehouses, you will see this particular warehouse. Okay, So I had created one warehouse by myself. Okay, but you are not seeing it here because I had created it using account admin role. And as I logged in, it was logged in with this sysadmin role. So I changed that role now. So see, all my warehouses that I had created, they are coming up. Okay. So I had created this VW data load, I think yesterday only in front of you guys. I was trying to show you that syntax, right? Yeah. Yeah, this one, see, I had created this yesterday, right? So at that time, the account, sorry, the role selected here was account admin. So if I go back to the warehouses, so we were doing a deep dive on this. Uh, so if I click on this and want to change something, I can change that also. Of course, the name cannot be changed once we have created it, but other stuff you can change. Okay, you can change the size. That is called resizing. Then you can change the number of clusters. You can change the standard policy, scaling policy, and all these other factors. Okay. So yesterday we had stopped at modes, different kinds of modes, right? Which is nothing but your maximized mode and auto scale mode. Yeah. So basically, these are the two types of modes a warehouse can be running in. Okay. One is maximized mode and one is auto scale mode. So maximized mode is very simple. When you create a warehouse, and when you configure it in such a way that your maximum clusters are equal to minimum clusters, that is called as maximized mode. Okay. And whenever this warehouse will be started through a query, suppose a query comes to this warehouse and it starts the warehouse. Okay. And say we have given an auto resume property. Auto resume property is nothing but if a warehouse is suspended, it will be automatically resumed the next time a query is issued. Okay, so say this is how we have created our warehouse, and it is currently in suspended mode. Okay, that means it's not working. It's shut down basically. So if you say maximum cluster is equal to minimum cluster, that's how you configure it. So the meaning of this is whenever my warehouse will start, okay, when a query comes for processing and my warehouse will start, that time all my three clusters, so maximum clusters are three, right? So all my three clusters will be simultaneously starting up. That is the meaning of maximize mode. Okay. So whether your query is taking, you have enough queries to engage all your clusters or no, it is not the headache of Snowflake. Okay. You have configured it in such a way that maximum cluster is equal to minimum cluster. So it will simply activate all the clusters in your warehouse. That is called as maximized mode. Okay. And this scaling policy will not be applicable to it. Whatever you choose here, it will not be applicable to it. And if you choose maximum cluster as one, so obviously minimum cluster will also be one, right? So this is maximum cluster equal to minimum cluster only, but this is not called maximized mode. Okay, it has to be the maximum cluster has to be greater than one, equal to minimum cluster, then only it will be called as maximized mode. That is what it means. Okay, so when do you want to use this kind of a warehouse in maximized mode? That you are very sure that for a particular amount of time in my day, or monthly, weekly, whatever it is, for a particular time frame, I will be going to have a very heavy load. Okay, continuous heavy load I'm going to have. So that time you don't want to keep shutting down, shutting down. That time you can keep it as maximum equal to minimum in the maximized mode basically. Okay, so this is what is maximized mode. Any questions on this? Any doubts?
No.
Okay, so let me, yeah, I'll move forward. Yeah, so opposed to maximize mode is what is auto scale mode. Okay, the opposite of maximize mode is auto scale. Okay, automatic scaling also. In this, obviously, maximum and minimum number of warehouses will be different. They will be of different values. Okay, so like in our case here, if I say choose 3 clusters, it will be, and I choose minimum as 1 cluster. So both are not equal, right? So in this case, this is called as auto scale mode. Okay, and whenever my warehouse will get resumed or started, it will have 1 cluster activated immediately. Okay, uh, how immediately? That all will depend on the scaling policy. Okay, so if you choose standard, it will have certain rules how to start the cluster, how to shut down the cluster. If you choose economy, that will also have certain rules how to start the cluster and how to shut down the cluster. So whatever policy you choose, according to that, that will decide how my clusters will be getting started and how my clusters will be getting shut down. That is nothing but the scaling policy. And this will be applied only in the auto scale mode. That is, maximum cluster is not equal to minimum cluster. Okay. So let's read the definition here. This mode is enabled by specifying different values for maximum and minimum cluster of number of warehouses. Okay, it should be actually clusters. In this mode, Snowflake starts and stops warehouses as needed to dynamically manage the load on the multi-cluster warehouse. As the number of concurrent user sessions or queries for the multi-cluster warehouse increases and queries start to queue due to insufficient resources, Snowflake automatically starts additional warehouses up to the maximum number defined for the multi-cluster warehouse. Similarly, as the load on multi-cluster warehouse decreases, Snowflake automatically shuts down warehouses to reduce the number of running warehouses and correspondingly the number of credits used by the multi-cluster warehouse. So what it is trying to say, guys, is suppose I have a 3 cluster warehouse, which I just created here also, this VW data load. If you see, it is a 3 cluster, 3 cluster warehouse, right? And let me give some good size, maybe say 4, medium size, okay? So this means in each cluster, there will be 4 nodes. This is what it means. So say it says I have 3 clusters in this warehouse. This is 3 clusters. Okay. And inside each cluster, I have chosen the size as medium. So I will have 4 nodes in my all the 3 clusters. Okay. They will be all of equal configuration, guys. Don't go on my drawing, but they will be all of equal configuration. Don't think that if I have drawn something small, it is a smaller machine like that. Okay. Yeah. So what happens is when my queries come to, suppose they come to this warehouse has been allocated to my queries. Okay. And I start to get some queries like this, one after the other, right? So what will happen is it will not, since it is not in maximized mode and minimum cluster we have said is 1. So 1 cluster will get activated. Okay. Then my queries will come and this particular cluster is activated. So my query will come and get allocated to this and my cluster is processing it. Suppose this query, you can call it say query 1. It is only taking 10% of this cluster. 10% of this cluster C1. Let it be C1. So it still has 90% of resources sitting idle, right? So in this case, still we don't need to activate the other 2 clusters because it's not required. So this is all being managed by Snowflake dynamically, guys. You don't have to worry about it. Like when to start which cluster, all that stuff you don't have to worry. All you have to define is the scaling policy. How to start, when to shut down. You have to just mention the scaling policy while creating a warehouse from here. This one, the scaling policy, either standard or economic. Based on those rules, Snowflake will manage the starting and shutting down of these clusters dynamically. Okay. Dynamically means you don't have to worry about it. You just have to say that follow this policy. And going forward, you can change the policy also. Like you can alter it also. Okay. For example, if I cancel it, this is already created, right? If I click on this row, all these will get enabled. And if I go to configure, it is right now standard. I can make it economic and I can change it. Okay. So here you can see the scaling policy, right? What scaling policy we have chosen for this, you can see. Okay. So you can change it at any time. Okay. Then yeah. So I was on the page, right? So yeah. So say 10% of my cluster is being used by this particular query. Another query comes, okay, and then say it uses say 80%, okay, of this cluster, say 80%. So still 10% is available. Okay. So guys, all this will be done by Snowflake. Okay. We are just seeing this for our conceptual understanding. You actually, don't have to be very say you don't have to worry like how Snowflake will be managing these resources internally. You don't have to worry of all that. So I'm just trying to say how it starts the clusters, how it shuts down the clusters, and say uh, another query also requires 10%, and another third query requires 10% only. So this cluster still has the bandwidth to accommodate it, so it will use it. Now it is 100%, right? So till here you saw that still Snowflake did not start these clusters because it's not required, right? And it is also in auto scale mode, right? Which is your maximum clusters is not equal to minimum cluster. So these two have not been started yet. Now another query comes, say fourth query comes, and it sees that this C1 cluster is completely busy. So now Snowflake will spin up the other cluster uh, in the warehouse. If it does not have additional cluster, suppose if it has just one cluster, then those queries will have to wait. Okay, they will be queued here only till this cluster gets free. Okay, but since we have additional clusters mentioned uh, during our configuration of the warehouse, so we can take advantage of it. So Snowflake will automatically spin the other cluster, this one. Okay, the third cluster is still not switched on because you don't need it, right? The second cluster is still having the bandwidth, and so on. The other queries also keep coming, and it will keep getting processed here till the time this particular cluster is completely occupied. And when additional stuff comes, then this cluster will also be spinned up. Okay, uh, and it will also get occupied. Once all the three clusters are occupied, and if still some queries come, okay, then they will be queued. They will have to wait for that particular clusters to get free. Okay, and additionally, on the opposite side, as and when the uh, clusters processing time is getting over, which means their processing is being completed, okay, and they are done with all the work that is assigned to them, and now they are idle, so that will begin to get shut down. So suppose cluster one gets completed, it completes all the tasks it was provided with, and now it has nothing, no query queue, no operation to do. It will Snowflake will automatically shut it down. Okay, so we don't have to worry as such that uh, or we do we have to monitor what is the workload going on this particular cluster? Should we shut it down now? Should we start now? All that is dynamically managed by Snowflake based on the policy you set. Okay, so there will have to be some rules followed by Snowflake, right? So what are those rules for governing the shutdown and starting down of the clusters is called a scaling policy, which is of two types, standard and economy. So in just some time, we will see what are the rules in standard and economy. But this is how dynamically Snowflake does starting off and shutting down of your clusters, which is why there is no management as an admin work you have to do for these things. Okay, look at what is the load on this cluster, then divert the other task to other cluster and all that. You don't have to do. So this management of starting and shutting down clusters uh, is taken care by Snowflake, which was a problem in a lot of earlier traditional databases and even Hadoop to some extent. These problems are there. So which is why cloud data warehouses are getting more popularity, uh, because it comes with unlimited, virtually unlimited scalability, right? For say tomorrow, if you feel that more queries are coming, a lot of other data sets or other query processing is coming, data loading is coming, or whatever is coming, you can go and increase the clusters here to tackle the concurrency issues. Increase these clusters. You can increase if you feel that okay, the queries which are coming are very heavy queries that they need more compute power. You can resize also the same warehouse. You can keep resizing. You can keep increasing the clusters. You can keep resizing, and it will be virtually infinite for you, right? So yeah, so this is what is auto scaling, guys. When dynamically Snowflake decides how to start and how to shut down, and maximum cluster is not equal to minimum cluster, that is called as auto scale mode. So any questions on this?
Uh, Abdul, is there any
So
way,
guys, let's look at what are the rules that govern the
Abdul, are
starting
you
and
able to hear
shutting
me?
down of our clusters. And if we go to the configuration here,
Abdul, are you able to hear me?
if you click on the warehouse, it will show you the load time also, load over, okay? Like what was the load on these warehouses. For example, if you go to compute, see at 8 p.m., what is the date? 8 p.m., 14 November, this was running. So such statistics you can get. Yeah, let me go back to warehouses. And if I go to configure again, see what it says. What this scaling policy says below. The policy used to automatically start up and shut down the clusters. Okay. So when you choose a policy here, whether it is economy or standard, you are basically telling Snowflake, okay, that you have to automatically manage the starting and shutting down of clusters. That is fine. But there are certain rules I want you to follow. If I tell you that your scaling policy will be standard, then you have to follow certain rules. Some set, say rule set A. But if I choose economy, you will have to follow set rules B. Okay. So if I am choosing standard, so you will have to follow uh, rules A. And if I choose standard, you have to follow a list of rules B. There's nothing called as A and B. I am just telling you guys for understanding purpose. That is what scaling policy means. And here it is written also. the policy used to automatically start up and shut down clusters. Okay, so let's see what those policies actually mean. Okay, so if the policy is standard, which is also the default policy, okay, which means if you go and create one new warehouse, suppose, so you see the scaling policy here is standard, which is default populated here. Okay, this is the default one. And extra large is the default size. Maximum cluster is 2 default. Minimum is 1. 10 minutes is 1. Auto resume is default. These are all default values. Okay. Okay, I got a message from Venkat that he got disconnected due to some internet issue. Yeah, he's trying to connect, guys. Let's continue. Yeah. So, what is the standard policy rules? Look at this. It says prevents / minimizes queuing by favoring starting additional clusters over conserving credits. So it means that if I choose standard policy, it is not going to be my cost effective policy. Okay, my rules will be that don't look at the cost, just give me performance. I don't want concurrency to prolong. Okay, minimize the queuing. Okay, as and when the query comes and it is queued, and if my clusters are inactive, make them active immediately. Okay, doesn't mind if my credits are consumed or not. So basically, it is favoring performance over cost. Okay, that is the whole and sole purpose of standard policy. Don't look at the cost, look at the performance. Okay, don't want concurrency issues. So that is what it means. Prevents / minimizes queuing by favoring starting additional clusters over conserving credits. So if you have additional clusters configured for your warehouse, and if the queries come and get queued, it will not wait for anything. It will simply spin up the new clusters, provided you have configured so many clusters while configuring the warehouse. Okay. If I mean, all the clusters in your warehouse are busy, so it will not be able to get additional clusters from anywhere because you have kept a lock on that I want only this many clusters in my warehouse. So that time the query will have to wait anyway, even if it's a standard policy. But if there are clusters which are inactive, it will go and immediately start it. So the purpose of standard policy is give preference to minimizing concurrency rather than saving the cost. Now see, there is a rule which defines how the cluster will start, and there is a rule which defines how the cluster will shut down. Okay, there are two actions: how to start the cluster, how to shut down the cluster. These policies will do only these two things. Okay, now let's see how the cluster starts in standard policy. If you have chosen standard policy, the first cluster starts immediately when either a query is queued or the system detects that there is one more query than the currently running cluster can execute. Yeah, I think it should be one or more query. Each successive cluster waits to start 20 seconds after the prior one has started. For example, if your warehouse is configured with 10 max clusters, it can take a full 200 plus seconds to start all 10 clusters. Okay. So what it means is the first cluster, right? So out of, say, let's consider this example only. You have 3 clusters with medium size, okay? And and we have, say, applied standard policy to it. So what it is saying is, as soon as the first cluster gets a query, when a query is queued, or the system detects that a query is currently running, okay, in the process of running, basically. So it will immediately start the first cluster. Immediately. It will not wait. And then as and when the queries keep coming here, they will keep working, getting processed by this cluster. But as the query, this cluster gets busy, completely occupied, now we have two more clusters which we have in this warehouse, right? Which can be utilized. So when will they start? As soon as the queries, this is completely occupied, and the queries have queued and they have come to be processed, it will wait 20 seconds, and then Snowflake will start this cluster also. Okay, but only when the query gets queued and needs processing, and because the cluster one is completely busy, that time only it will get started in 20 seconds. But within that 20 seconds, if the first cluster gets free and the queries are in queue, and it can be accommodated by that cluster, it will not spin up the second cluster. It will continue with the first cluster only. So the rule for starting the subsequent clusters, and provided there are queries which are queued or needs processing, and the other cluster is busy, it is 20 seconds. It will wait for 20 seconds. So remember, first cluster is immediate. As soon as the query comes or gets queued, it is immediate. Second cluster waits for 20 seconds. Okay, to get activated. So that is the policy of starting the cluster, or standard policy. Similarly, for shutdown, after 2 to 3 consecutive successful checks performed at 1 minute intervals, which determine whether the load on the least loaded cluster could be redistributed to the other clusters without spinning up the cluster again. So the earlier point we discussed about starting the cluster in 20 seconds time is about starting of the cluster. Okay, so first cluster is immediate. The second cluster waits for 20 seconds. The subsequent clusters, third, fourth, fifth, all start in 20 seconds interval of time. That is all about how cluster starts. How does Snowflake decide to shut down the cluster? That rule also is there in scaling policy standard. And as you can see from this column here, cluster shutdown, correct? So what it will do is, it will check out of, so in this case, we have 3 clusters. It will check in every 1 minute, it will check which is the least loaded cluster. Just a second, I'm getting a call. Okay, got disconnected. Yeah, so what it will do is, in an interval of 1 minute, 2-3 times it will check which cluster is least loaded. Okay, in 1 minute, it will check 2 to 3 times. Suppose this cluster C2 is least loaded. Okay, it checked third time in the interval of 1 minute and found out that my cluster C2 is least loaded. Okay, so what it will see, that whatever processing is being done here, can it be redistributed to other clusters, this cluster or this clusters, and later on I don't have so much load queued up that I need to still start this cluster again. Okay, that dot point also it sees. Okay, so if that qualifies, it will shut down this cluster. It will redistribute the load on this cluster to other clusters which are active. Okay, which are active, that is important. Okay, it will not spin up a cluster which is idle to redistribute. It will only redistribute to active clusters, and it will also see that is there any pending load or queued queries which need attention, and it is not there, so it will shut down the cluster like this. And And then in the next minute, it will again do the same activity for the other two clusters. Okay, and it will keep on shutting down the clusters like in that fashion. So this is the rule for standard policy. Interval of 1 minute, it will check 2 to 3 times maximum, which is the least loaded cluster. Can the work on that particular cluster, can it be redistributed to other clusters which are active? And also there is not enough workload queued up so that I have to spin this cluster again. Okay, so this is the rule for shutting down the cluster. Let me read that again. After 2 to 3 consecutive successful checks performed at 1 minute interval, which determine whether the load on the least loaded cluster could be redistributed to other clusters without spinning up the clusters again. Okay. So this is what happens when you choose a standard policy. Come to economy. Any questions on this standard policy?
Abdullah, do we get any scenario-based questions on this? Identify which is standard and which is economy.
Okay. Yeah, I think Venkat is back now.
Abdullah, are you able to hear me?
Hello? Yeah, Venkat, you're able to hear, right? Venkat, are you
Hello?
able to hear us?
Yeah, I can able to hear Abdul. Suddenly machine got restarted. After you
Guys,
completed
you are
that,
able to hear me?
yeah, I can hear
Vinod?
Abdul.
Vinod, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Abdullah. I'm able to hear.
Abdul, can you hear me? Yes, Venkat.
Guys, you're able to hear me?
Yes, Abdul, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Did you hear what I talked about this scaling policy?
No, Abdul, after you completed that auto scaling, my machine got disconnected. So 10 minutes machine was not enough actually.
Okay. No, you came just now. I'm talking about Vinod and Shiva and Chidambaram.
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay, you heard till standard policy cluster shutdown rule, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Abdul,
Fine.
are you able to hear me?
Shiva, yeah, I'm able to hear you.
Okay.
So, guys, I was just asking, do you have any doubts on the standard policy rules? I just
Yes,
finished that.
Abdullah. Yeah, Abdullah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do we get any scenario-based questions to identify which is a standard policy, which is an economy policy when cluster starts? Kind of in the certification, I'm asking. Scenario, they'll give a scenario and then ask us to choose which one is it.
Not scenario based, I have never seen as far as policy is concerned, but I have seen that they will ask you that which policy you will select and have a preference of saving the cost as compared to performance.
Okay.
That I have seen. And then they will give you certain options like multiple options, like what are the scaling policies you can choose. They will give you standard, economy, and some other, bogus values also, bogus these things, and then you will have to choose. But scenario based, I have never seen, to be honest. Like in this particular scenario, what? Because see, this is very personal thing, right? What policy to follow? Because see, what happens if there is a very important query or a important, let's say an important report which has to go to a business at the say end of month or say quarter, which is very important for them, for deciding for probably they need to send it to some government agencies for, tax updates or whatever. So it is very important. So that time they might say, okay, let's not be so hell-bent on the cost. Okay, and let's go with a standard policy only. Okay, but there might be certain reports so it's all SLA dependent, right? So if the SLA is very less for certain things, you will obviously be compromising on the cost. But if the SLA is, not very tight for certain processes, you would want to go for economy. Okay, so it is a very personal choice of how you want to configure it. Okay, but most of the time I have seen economy only. As a dev guy, I have seen economy, because for me as a developer, you will anyway get economy only. Okay. Okay. So guys, moving on to the economy rules. Okay, what happens when you choose scaling policy as economy? So see here, conserves credits by favoring keeping running clusters fully loaded rather than starting additional clusters, which may result in queries being queued and taking longer to complete. So see, exactly the opposite of standard. In economy, your focus is to save the cost. Okay, so by now we know that compute resources, that is your warehouse, cloud service layer, they are consuming credits. As and when they are being used, they are consuming credits based on which you will be charged, right? So the cost for using warehouse, your cloud service layer is in credits, correct? Storage is not in credits. Storage is either on demand or pre-purchase in dollar amounts. But this warehouse or compute resources basically are in terms of credits. The amount of usage you do for your warehouse, you will be consuming certain credits. And when you consume certain credits, multiply that with the dollar amount, and that is your charge. That is your bill, right? So in economy, you are more focused on saving the consumption of credits rather than seeing whether the queries are queued, whether they are taking longer time to complete, you know. So that is the secondary, uh, say, secondary in your list. It is not important for you. Important for you is saving the cost. That is what is economy policy. Okay, so conserves credits. Conserves means saves, right? Conserves credits by favoring keeping running clusters fully loaded rather than starting additional clusters. So till the time, suppose I have these three clusters, right? These three clusters, and say now my scaling policy is economy, suppose. So till this one cluster is completely occupied, 100%, I will not go and spin up other clusters. Okay. So let's see to the maximum limit where it can be used. This particular cluster. Let the queries keep coming and keep using it. Okay, I will not spin up other clusters unless it reaches 100%. Right? And let's see when to start the cluster, the other clusters. What is the rule for that? So the rule is, see, the cluster start rule. And this is available on Snowflake documentation website also, guys, this chart, okay? See the rule. Only if the system estimates there is enough query load to keep the cluster busy for at least 6 minutes. Which means my first cluster is completely busy. Okay. Or even if it's the first cluster, let's not say, let's say the query load has come. Okay. And my warehouse got started. So my first cluster is not starting immediately as opposed to standard policy. See what it says? In standard, it says the first cluster will start immediately when the query comes. Here, it will not start immediately, right? Because it doesn't mention anyway, right? So suppose say queries come. So my Snowflake will estimate, okay, all these queries which have come, can they keep my cluster busy for 6 minutes at least? Then only I will start my what do you call, my cluster one. Okay. Now say my query load comes, my Snowflake internally has estimated, okay, it will keep it busy for 6 minutes and it gets 100% occupied. All the queries keep coming, it gets 100% occupied. Some more queries come and now my cluster 1 is completely occupied, okay? Now it will again wait, it will not immediately start the second cluster. It will again see if the load that has come, will it keep my cluster busy for the next 6 minutes? If it can keep it busy for the next 6 minutes, it will start this cluster, otherwise it will queue it. It will not start. If it says that, okay, the query load that has come, it will, if you start the second cluster, it will be over in say 2 minutes. So it will not start, it will wait, it will keep waiting. And in the meantime, if the cluster 1 gets gets a little free, maybe from 100% to 50%, it will go to that cluster. Or if still this cluster is busy, this cluster 1, and this pile of queries which are queued, and some additional queries also come, and now my second cluster will be busy for the next 6 minutes, then it will get started. So the thumb rule is the clusters, all the clusters, whether it is first, second, third, fourth, how many clusters, whatever clusters are there in the warehouse, whichever cluster it is, they will only get started if the Snowflake estimates that the query load which have come can keep my cluster busy for the next 6 minutes. See, that is what it says. Only if the system estimates there's enough query load to keep the cluster busy for at least 6 minutes. Okay, so this makes me, because I have while teaching, I have never made economy kind of a configuration. Let me.
Abdul, one question. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt. So
Yeah.
that 6 minutes, is it configurable or it has been fixed by Snowflake during the fabrication?
Yes. This is fixed by Snowflake.
Any reason for 6 minutes? No, just a curious question, but it may not be.
No, that's fine. I'm also not aware if there's any specific reason for this. But yes, this is not changeable or configurable, because if you see in the warehouse creation also, there's nothing mentioned like that under the scaling policy here. Okay, it's either standard or either it's economy.
Okay.
So even I'm not sure why they made it 6 minutes. Let me see the documentation in case they have mentioned like what is the reason behind it, then probably I can share with you guys. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
No problem. So I have never fired any queries here, guys, to using economy, which makes me a little curious also. So I have changed it to economy here. Let me go to some worksheet and let me open some table which I have created recently. Okay, so this has 3 rows. And let me use VW data underscore load. So this is a very small query, right? I mean, 3 rows only. So I want to see whether, if it's economy, it will, because it will not be engaging my clusters for 6 minutes. It will not keep it busy for 6 minutes. It will, I mean, within seconds, it will be over. Okay. But it is still starting it. Right? So Okay, so it says at least 6 minutes, right? So that means if it is less than 6 minutes, it should not start the cluster. That's what it means, right? If suppose the query load is estimated for say 4 minutes, so it might not start the cluster. That's what I am understanding, isn't it? So this is VW, this is economy only. Yeah. See guys, this is the latest query I fired, and see it is saying it used VW warehouse data load, and how many clusters did it use? One cluster, extra small. Whatever. So not sure why it's doing like that. Maybe there will be something more in the documentation. Let me read it and get back to you guys. But as far as the rules which they have mentioned in their documentation, this is what they have mentioned. So I have taken this from their documentation only. So if you go to the documentation.
Abdul, this is Venkat.
Yeah.
Just can you explain standard ones, Abdul?
Yeah. I will. Just a minute. I'm just checking that documentation.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. See, this is the policies which you choose, and this is how it says warehouse starts. Okay. So here it says for economy policy that only if the system estimates there is enough query load to keep the warehouse busy for at least 6 minutes. Okay. So I mean, internally, it might not be so hard and fast, guys. I mean, internally, it might be saying that there's not much load queued for that particular warehouse, so we can immediately give back the results. Because it is otherwise, this is a 3 second. If you saw that it just came in some 300 milliseconds, the results came back in 3 milliseconds, and it is not enough to keep your warehouse busy. So it doesn't mean that it will wait a long time. So maybe it's a trial account, and maybe you don't want to wait for the queue of the query is not big enough, so maybe they are doing this way, but ultimately this is the rule that they have mentioned. See, the scaling policy for a multi warehouse only applies if it is running in auto scale mode. Okay, in maximized mode, all warehouses run concurrently, as there is no need to start or shut down individual warehouses. I hope it is not in maximized mode. It's not in maximized mode. Okay, guys. So I don't have idea why it did like that, but it doesn't make sense also to wait for that query for 6 minutes. I mean, till to see whether it will keep busy the warehouse, at least busy for 6 minutes, because there's no enough query load on it. So maybe that's
Abdul,
what. Yeah.
Abdul, you ran two parallel query And you see the second cluster also got started.
In the history.
Yeah,
No, one cluster only. See,
it is only one cluster, right? Then what is what that you said that you don't know that as of now? What is it? What is it?
no. I said if in the rule for economy, if you go back to this, if the rule it says, right, when will the warehouse start? If
Yeah.
you choose economy, it says only if the system estimates there is enough query load to keep the cluster busy for at least 6 minutes. Correct?
Yeah.
So if I have enough query load, which will keep my my cluster busy at least for 6 minutes, then only it will start the cluster. That's what it
No,
says.
no, that may be the second cluster. Whatever they are telling, that may be the second cluster, right?
But in this standard, they have mentioned the first cluster, right? The first cluster should start immediately, but they have not mentioned anything here like that.
No, what I understand by seeing this is,
Yeah,
right, the moment the system detects the query, right, so it will start the cluster. Maybe they skipped it to tell because that is obvious. When the first cluster is 100% full, right, they
yeah,
will when the for example we have a 10 query which is using the first cluster. When the 11th query comes, right, if they
correct.
if system find the 10th query or the first query of the cluster 1 is going to complete before 5 minutes, then they will not spin up the second cluster. They will wait for 5 minutes, use the first cluster itself. That is what they are trying to say here. It is not
Yeah,
because
yeah,
without the cluster they cannot even run even a single query, right?
right. So yeah,
The
this that
cluster,
is
yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. So first cluster immediately it will start for both the cases, uh, and it is mostly talking about second cluster
second,
onwards,
yeah, they did
subsequent
not
clusters.
specifically mention the first or second cluster, but technically the description what it means to me is it is for second cluster, right? For the first cluster, for this standard, you see, for 1 minute they will poll 3 times, right? Right?
Yeah,
That is
that is for shutting down.
sorry. Here 20 each
20 seconds.
20 seconds, right?
Yeah,
Here it is 6 minutes. That is the difference.
right. So yeah, that is what is. I also think no. Thanks for clarifying. I think here, although they are not mentioned that first cluster starts immediately, they implicitly mean that only that any warehouse basically, as we have seen the definitions also earlier. If you go back, see, typically few seconds to start, right? And as soon as SQL is given to warehouse, it starts processing the queries. So ultimately, what it means is basically the first cluster is immediately starting for both the cases, and this rule applies for the second cluster onwards, subsequent clusters. Yeah, that could only be the thing, right? Because it doesn't make sense to start the first cluster after 6 minutes load. Otherwise, the query which I fired here,
No, no. It is not possible. For
yeah,
example, if a query runs a query, it takes only few milliseconds. But if they say, even though it is economy, I will wait for 6 minutes to start the first, even the first cluster, then I will give the only result after 6 minutes and 2 milliseconds. It is something that it's a flawed architecture.
correct,
Right?
correct,
Yeah.
correct. So it is not applicable for first cluster. My bad. I just wanted to do an experiment actually. So does it mean that? And because I have never fired any query using economy till now, economy policy till now. So I just went and so basically, yes, it is first cluster is immediate. And as far as the warehouse definition is also concerned, it is basically whenever a query comes to a warehouse, it immediately starts the cluster. Okay, at least the first cluster. That is the definition also of the warehouse. So whether it is standard or economy policy doesn't matter. First cluster will start as it is immediately. From the
So,
subsequent,
Abdul,
yeah.
Abdul, the query which you ran in the UI, the reason why you ran is you wanted to check if system is waiting for 6 minutes.
Yeah,
or not.
yeah.
No, no. What I believe, Abdul. Yeah.
Yes. That is what I was trying to, because I got a little confused here. Like, they have not mentioned the first cluster or not. Basically, it was implicitly, and also, I should have understood by the definition itself, because in the warehouse, when you go and read what is a warehouse, it will tell you that as soon as the query is submitted, it starts the cluster. It starts to provision the resources, right? So if you see here, it says SQL execution doesn't start until all compute resources are successfully provisioned. So as soon as you start the warehouse, Snowflake starts to provision the warehouses. Basically, it starts to get the warehouses, and as the execution will not start until all the warehouses have been procured from the cloud. So that is what it means basically. So guys, just remember that first cluster will immediately start either irrespective of standard and economy. Second cluster rule, subsequent to the first cluster, third, second, third, fourth, whatever it might be, this will be the rule followed to start it. That only if the system estimate there's enough query load to keep the cluster busy for at least 6 minutes. Okay.
Abdul, one more thing, right? If you see, even as a lab, if you think in a very basic in a basic level, right? So what the warehouse is going to achieve by waiting 6 minutes, even though it is economic, right? Abdul,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So even though if it waits for 6 minutes, there is nothing to save. You have to start the cluster. Right. So you don't have to, there is nothing to save here. You don't have even a single cluster. Even if you wait for 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you have to at least start the cluster to run the query. It is very...
Yeah. In this case, it will never start only. If going by...
Then in its economy, it be idle. It won't give the result to us. Even
exactly.
If we wait for... Yeah.
That's right. So I think, suppose, imagine that my first cluster is busy now, okay, completely busy. And this query comes now. This query, which probably will give results in seconds. So that time it will be queued. Okay, right, Shiva? That should be the case, right? In that case, when my first cluster is busy, and now this query has come. This is the only pending query, but it will. It can either go to the second cluster only because my first cluster is busy, but it will not start because it is not capable enough to engage it for the next 6 minutes. Okay. Okay, guys, so confusion is clear here. So remember, Venkat, I will come to standard in a bit. I will just finish this economy part and I will explain standard again to you.
Okay.
So so guys, first cluster immediately starts as soon as the query is fired to your warehouses, irrespective of the policy. Second cluster starting has some rules. For economy, it is that your query load should be able to keep it busy for the next 6 minutes, at least 6 minutes. Okay. Then let's see what is the rule for shutting down the cluster. It is same as standard, but it is only the difference is the frequency of checking is a little higher in economy. So it says after 5 to 6 consecutive successful checks, it will see in an interval of 1 minute. So as compared to standard, in 1 minute interval, it was just checking 2 to 3 times. But in interval of 1 minute in economy case, it is checking 5 to 6 times consecutively. Okay, it will check which is the least loaded cluster. It will redistribute it to the other clusters if possible. And that same cluster which is the least loaded cluster which they want to shut down, there is no enough query. There's no query load in the queue to keep it engaged. These two things it will check and it will shut down. So it is similar to standard that we discussed some time back. Only the frequency of checking is more as compared to standard. In standard, it is 2 to 3 times. In economy is 5 to 6 times. Otherwise, the rule is exactly the same. Okay. So nothing to understand here in this case. Only thing is that the frequency of checking is more. So guys, Venkat had got dropped off because of internet issue. So let me just quickly explain him what standard policy is. So Venkat, whenever we are configuring the warehouse in auto scale mode, right, which is
Yes,
your maximum cluster count is not equal to minimum cluster count. That is your auto scale mode, right?
yes.
In that case, there is an auto scale policy which you can choose. Okay.
Okay.
In maximize mode, these two policies will not be applicable. Even if you choose standard or economy, it will not be applied to it. Okay, maximize case is what? Maximum cluster equal to minimum cluster. That is your maximized mode, correct? In that case, all the clusters will be activated as soon as the query is given to them, all the clusters.
Okay.
But in auto scale mode, what happens is there are two policies you have to choose. Okay, either standard or economy. So in standard, what happens is, see the description, prevents or minimizes queuing by favoring starting additional clusters over conserving credits. So in a nutshell, what it says that if my queries are queued, I have so many, say 10 queries which have come to my warehouse, incoming 10 queries. Okay. See, this is my warehouse with 3 clusters. Okay, and say medium size, four nodes in each cluster. Okay. So if I have 10 queries which are coming, so it says spin up all the clusters that require to process all these queries. Don't queue them. I mean, don't minimize the queuing as far as possible. Don't let them queue for a long time. Even if the consumption of credits, because the number of clusters that you use in the warehouse, that amount of credits will be also consumed, right? Because you are using more clusters, that means your billing is more, correct? You are consuming more credits. So it gives preference to performance, and saving cost is secondary. It is not on the list for standard policy. So that is what standard policy wants to do. You understood this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So in a nutshell, it says more concern on performance and less concern on cost. That's what it means. Don't let the queries queue for a long time. If you get the queries, you have clusters free, spin them up. That's it. That's what it tries to do. But
Okay.
how to start the cluster? They have certain rule. Okay. So the first cluster in the warehouse, whatever will be our first cluster, that's C1, right? For example, this is our C1 cluster. This is C2 and C3. So for standard, what it will do is first cluster will immediately start as soon as the query comes. Query starts to come. Okay. It will keep engaging with the first cluster, and as soon as this whole cluster becomes fully occupied, it is 100% occupied now. Okay. And say more query load comes, additional 3-4 queries come for processing. Right. So it has only option to go to other clusters, right? Because this is already blocked. I mean, already occupied 100%. It cannot take that other load, right? So what is the policy to start the other cluster? The second or third cluster. So what the policy says that each successive cluster, means after the first cluster, waits to start 20 seconds after the prior one has started. So it will wait for 20 seconds. Okay. And then it will start the second cluster, third cluster, and fourth cluster onwards. That is what the cluster starting policy is for standard. If you choose standard policy, that is the rule for starting the cluster. So first cluster immediately, second cluster when the first cluster already started and allocated. After that, it will wait for 20 seconds and it will start. Okay, it will not let the query queue. Understood?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, and similarly, the shutting down policy for standard is in interval of 1 minute, every 1 minute, it will keep checking which is the least loaded cluster. Okay. Suppose my least loaded cluster, so this is say 70% loaded, my C1 is 70% loaded, my C2 is 20% loaded, and my C3 is say 50% loaded. So in 1 minute, it will check which is my least loaded cluster, which is C2, and it will check that for 2 or 3 times, which is the least loaded cluster. So third time it checked and it found that C2 is the least loaded. Only 10% it is loaded. Okay. So it will see, can I redistribute this work, whatever work it is doing, can he redistribute it to other clusters, maybe to C1 or C2? Can it be redistributed? If it can be redistributed to other clusters, if other clusters have bandwidth and it can be redistributed, and also there is no other query load in the queue which needs this cluster, this C2, it will shut down this cluster. That is the rule for shutting down this cluster.
Okay.
Any doubts in this?
Yeah. One doubt, Abdul.
Yeah.
For example, warehouse will store the cache data, right, Abdul? So in case if I am adding another one cluster, still that cache data will be available, or it will be first if I am adding a cluster, just for understanding this.
If you're adding additional cluster, you're saying like this.
Yeah. Still my cache will be available, or it will be flushed.
Yeah. You're saying fourth cluster you added, right? There are 3 clusters, but fourth cluster you added.
Yes.
Yeah. So see, actually there are 3 types of caches. Okay. 2 caches are there in the cloud service layer. Okay. Which is metadata and result cache. And apart from that, in the warehouses, each node, right? Each machine in the cluster basically has its own local cache or local storage also. Because ultimately this node is nothing but a machine, right? It is having a compute process, RAM, ROM, everything, CPU, and its SSD, local storage also. So this local storage is also acting as a cache sometimes. So if you add another cluster, it will not be removed. But when you suspend the cluster completely, only then the cache gets removed from the warehouse level. Whatever cache is at the warehouse level, that gets removed once the warehouse is suspended. Not on resizing or not on adding clusters.
Okay. And other thing is there maybe in any way to check whether my query is frequently getting from taken data from the cache or by table, because the cost is involved, right? So for checking, is there any option?
Yeah, there is option. So if you go to this, see, I fired this query just some time back, right? This product test. So if you see here, this was the first time I fired that query. So if I go to profile here, okay, so see, it says it scanned this table, supplier test table. Okay, it scanned the table, right? Table scan, it says, and it gave back the result, correct? And it also went through one partition. It scanned one partition. There's very less data right now in this. Okay. If I fired this query again the second time just now, right? In front of you. So see, now it has taken it from query result, cache, reused, right? There is no scanning of any partition here, if you see. It just took it from the cache. So from profile, you can see. Okay. But this is going to anyway come in the, later section when we are doing this micro partitioning and clustering and caching and all that. That time it's going to come anyway.
Okay.
But as for your, but I have answered your question, like how you can see.
Yes.
You can go to the query ID from here also, or you can go from history also. You can click on the query ID, go to the profile. Okay, here you can see this plan, whether it is coming from the table scan or whether it is coming from the cache. You can see that.
Okay. That's
okay. So Yeah, so this is about standard rule. So it favors basically performance over cost, and economy favors to save cost rather than, I mean, performance is secondary. And these are the rules how the warehouse will start and how the warehouse will shut down. So you were there when I was telling about economy, right, Venkat?
Yes, yes, I was there. Abdul.
Okay, so economy is fine, right? No issues in that.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, okay. Any other folks? I mean, any other folks have any doubts in this? Okay. Okay, guys. So I will let me give you certain useful commands today. I was going to give. I showed you that list yesterday, right? Let me open those commands and show you what they do basically. They're very simple commands. They're handy commands also. I will explain one by one. Simple. Okay, guys. So guys, you have seen that whenever we are going to fire queries, we are going to change the context area here. We will use certain role, we will use certain warehouse, certain database, certain schema. So if you don't want to do it from the UI, you can directly write commands also for that. Okay, for selecting, you're basically setting the context for this particular worksheet or this particular session. You can call it session also. So if you don't want to do it through web UI, you can do it through commands. Okay, so for example, I want to use, say, sample DB. Okay, sample underscore DB. This is the database I created yesterday, right? So suppose I want to set this database for now. So I do it and see I I got sample DB selected, and by default it is selecting public schema also. So my sample DB has sample schema also. So if I want to use sample schema, so basically the command is use. Okay, use which database, use which schema, use which warehouse, use which role. So I will say use schema sample underscore schema. So it has set, see, it has set sample schema now. Okay, I want to use warehouse, say this one. Okay, so I will say use warehouse, this name of the warehouse. See, it has changed the warehouse here, right? I can change again also if I want to. See, it has changed. Okay, get back that. And guys, you can run it together also. I mean, but you need to give a semicolon at the end, otherwise it will give some error. But you can run this together. Okay. So see, right now it's selected account admin. What is the owner of this? Okay, sysadmin is the owner. Sample schema also sysadmin. Okay. Let me now run it together. I mean, these four. Okay, all have run. What happened? Why will it? Object does not exist. Which object? Okay, okay. Guys, actually, this warehouse, right? VW data load. If you see, the owner is account admin actually. Okay, and I am using sysadmin here, right? Sysadmin. That is why when I am trying to set this warehouse, it is not letting me do that. Okay, so let me make compute warehouse, because this is available to all the roles. See, now it has set everything. So this way you can run, I mean, multiple statements also. You have to give semicolon at the end. And this is how you can change the context. Use. Okay. Then these are certain system functions. Okay. If you want to know what is the current warehouse you are using, this is select current underscore warehouse. What is the current user you are logged in with? This is APD31 Snowflake, this one. right? So select current user, which is the current role you are using, sysadmin. Okay, so this will give you the role of in the worksheet which is selected, not here. So see, it is giving sysadmin, right? Then this is the which is the database you are working on right now, sample DB, this one, which is the current schema, that sample schema. So this is just for current, like how it is in Oracle, like sysdate. That way, current underscore date for Snowflake. So it's 14 November. Then its current timestamp it will give you 7:56. It is in GMT. Okay, it's not in Indian time. GMT. Okay. Then, if you want to see certain objects in your account, okay, so there is command called show. Okay, so if you want to see what all databases are there, so say show databases, it will show you all the databases and all their owners, comments, and retention time and all that. Okay, then you have, if you want to see the roles, you can see what all roles I have. Show roles. See, I have all the default roles. I have not created anything yet, right? So all the default roles that it's showing to me. Then if it is show users, okay, so my sysadmin doesn't have the privilege to fire this command, guys. So let me change it to account admin. Now I can change it from here again. Okay, I can say use role account admin. I can do this also, or I can change it from here also. Okay, so I changed it. It got changed. Now show users. Okay, so show users, only account admin has privilege. So see, all the users in my account, ABDC1 Snowflake, this, right? Then show tables, all the tables that you have, but it will show you only the table which is there in the current database. This sample DB, not all tables. Okay. Then this is how we created the warehouse, right? Yeah. So which is the current version of Snowflake that we are using is this one, 5.403. This I have told you. Anything else? No. Other things I will tell you later. And how to see the session ID. See, I told you each worksheet will have a separate session, right? So if we go to the history, here, it will show me this session ID. See, I fired these two queries, right? If you see this product test and supplier test, when I was explaining that economy policy, I have fired these two queries, right? In the same worksheet, if you see. So they have the same session ID. In the same worksheet I had fired, right? So how to find out the value of our session ID is simple. Select, is this where I fired those queries? Okay, yeah, I fired it here. So to find out the session ID, it is select current underscore session. See, this is last 4 digits, if you remember, 9233. If you go to the history, got disconnected. Yeah, so if you go to the history, refresh, see, those two queries which I fired before. Let's filter it by session, guys. You can filter it from here, session ID, and let's give this. Yeah, so see, I had fired those two queries, right? Product test and supplier test in the same worksheet, so same session. So, Vinod, I think you got disconnected, right? So till where did you listen?
Yeah, I just got disconnected 5 minutes back. I joined.
Okay, so did you see these commands when I was explaining these commands?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I just told one command how to see the session ID of each worksheet. So this is the command: select current version, current session. This will give you the session ID for that particular worksheet or that particular session. So if you go fire this in the other worksheet, if I create say one more worksheet here, and if I fire this here, there'll be some other session ID created. Okay,
Yeah,
so 9237, new one, yeah. And again, this is another worksheet that I was showing those commands, right? So here also some other IDs created. So these are these, yeah, yeah. Sorry, you're asking something?
no.
Okay, okay. Okay, guys. So any doubts? Because I'm planning to today stop here. Okay. Any doubts? Because there's another topic starting after this, which is information schema. Okay, it will be I mean, a little heavy one. In half an hour, I might not be able to complete it, and if I leave it in between, it might be a bit might create some doubts. So I will just give you a very brief information of what. So okay, for before moving to information schema, any doubts in the web UI tool, this whole web UI, or when we did a deep dive on warehouses, any doubts there?
But Abdul, I have a doubt of this, Venkat.
Yeah.
Can warehouse can be accessed in another account actually? Is this possible? The reason why I'm asking is that, see, I might be in a medical leave for 1 week, so there might be a chance of changes in my warehouse. There may be re-indexing or something. So it can be accessed outside the account.
It can be accessed by other users in the same account. I mean, not other account. Like, see, this is your account, right? This is your account. This is your organization first, okay? Then this is your account, okay? In this you have certain warehouses, right? This is your warehouses. Suppose this is your warehouse, okay? And this is your account. So you are saying there is one more account in this organization here. And so you are saying this account is suppose account 2, right?
Yes.
So you are saying, can I use this warehouse?
Yes.
I'm not sure. I don't think you can use this warehouse. I don't think so. But I mean, you want to share it with whom? I mean, for example,
I don't want to share, Abdul, but just I'm giving a real-time business scenario actually. So I given my warehouse to a BI team. So I might be sudden medical leave. So there might be a chance of no query is slowing down or extra user is added. So somebody might additional resource to change some cluster something. So
yeah.
in that case, how this can be handled this scenario? Just I'm asking.
So your BI team is in the same account or some other account? Because if your BI team has users in the same account, then it can access. But if it is in some other account, they can have their own warehouse created. Right? They can have
Same account. Same account. Maybe you
Okay.
can take this
Okay.
account.
Yeah, then it can access your warehouse, provided they have the privileges.
No. See, they can access Abdul. Maybe
Yeah.
you can take you as an end user. You can access my account if I am in a medical leave also. Okay. So suddenly another 10 users is adding in my BA team. So currently now cluster need to be added. Okay. But
In
you
the
are reaching
warehouse.
me. But yes, in the warehouse, you are
Correct.
reaching to me. I'm telling that Abdul, sorry, I'm in a medical leave.
Correct.
You contact some other person. So that is the
Right.
case within the account. If warehouse is there, how this will be handled?
Right. So I will tell you when we come to this roles and users, right? And we have this topic roles and users, how we give privileges, how we can access each other's objects, and how we can do modifications on them. That I can tell you that time.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Because just remember one thumb rule, okay, that in Snowflake, okay, this is a rule, general rule in Snowflake. No, not a user is not an owner of anything. Okay. So if you see, if I go to this warehouse also, if you see, although I am logged in with ABD31 Snowflake, this user, I'm logged in with this user, but whatever warehouse I create, it will be ultimately the role that I have created with. That will be the use, that will be the owner. Okay, so ABD31 Snowflake is not the owner for this warehouse. Suppose I change this to sysadmin, suppose. Okay, now ABD31 is a user and it is acquiring the role of sysadmin, correct? So if I create one test warehouse, I will remove it also after I create it. So I'll use any configuration. Anyway, I have to remove it, right? So I see I created one just one test warehouse, right? Here. Let me suspend. Yeah. So owner is not ABD31 Snowflake. Okay. So if you go here, owner is sysadmin. The role, always the role is the owner in Snowflake.
Okay. That means account 2 as a sysadmin, they can access the warehouse. That is what you are
No,
trying to
not
tell.
account two. Any user in account one which has sysadmin role can access that. Because account one and account two are not related. It is separately something different, and this is something different. This account is whatever you create in this, only database objects can be shared with each other, not the warehouses. Okay, so and it is just a sharing. I mean, you cannot write also. It will be only sharing allowed. So if you have certain users here, suppose these are the users. Uh, guys, I'm going to anyway take this topic. I'm just showing it to Venkat because I'm not taking any other topic right now. So if don't get confused, I will anyway take this. So suppose Venkat, these are our users. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Suppose this is your user, Venkat, suppose, right? And this is Shiva. He's from BIT, suppose. So you go on medically. Okay. So now Shiva wants to use this warehouse and add one cluster in this. That is the scenario, right?
Yes.
Correct. So now you, as I said, user will not be the owner. Suppose you only created this warehouse, suppose, but with the role of say sysadmin. So I just showed you that any object in Snowflake, the owner is roles, right? I just showed you that, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
suppose if Shiva also has this role, so he can do anything with this warehouse. He can add the warehouse, he can remove the warehouse, he can resize, downsize, he can do anything with it.
Okay. That means same account can be used by multiple users also in real time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, inside this, so when I showed this web UI tool, right? So if we go to, let me change this to account admin. So if we go to the account tab, this tab is only available to account admin and user security admin. Okay. So if you see this users tab here, right? Users tab here. So if you go to users, you can create any number of users. If you create one here, then you can create another, second, third, fourth, fifth, like that.
Yeah. No, I got it.
Okay. So anyway, there is a separate topic for completely dedicated to roles and users. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So any doubt, guys, for this entire web UI or warehouses till now? Okay. So just for your information, okay, I will be uploading this SQLs, guys, which I just showed you, right? This use, show, select, these system functions. I'll be uploading it in the drive today, okay? Once I upload the recording and PPT and all that, I will be uploading this SQL so you can practice and see for yourself also. Okay, so briefly, let me explain one thing about information. So guys, the next topic is, assuming you don't have any questions in the past topics, I am moving to the next one. So this is your information schema. This is the next topic. Okay. So let me tell you in brief, any database that you create in Snowflake, okay, any database that you create in Snowflake in your account, or when you log in to this, your account, your respective account, you will create a database. So any database comes with two default schemas, which is information schema and public schema. Okay. So just to demonstrate, let me create one test DB. Okay, I am creating this. I got created, and as you can see, the owner is account admin. I used that role here. So the owner is account admin. So if I go to worksheets, I refresh it. So see, I have test DB here. If I open it, it will give me two default schemas: information schema, public schema. Okay. In public schema, you can create your tables, views, user definitions, whatever you want to. You can create that. Okay. It is an empty schema, or you can create a custom defined schema also, like how I created last time in sample DB. I created sample schema, right? So that way you can create in public, I mean, in test DB also, and create tables on there also, if you want, or you can continue in public also, up to you. So information schema is a read-only schema. You cannot do any DML operations. I mean, as like insert, delete, update, all that stuff you cannot do. And in this, you will find views. There are views, certain views. And these views are given by Snowflake only, system defined views. And it basically stores the metadata information of your objects. Okay, so what all objects do we have in the account of Snowflake? These are objects, right? User, role, database, warehouse, schema, table, view, stage. All this is nothing but objects. So the metadata of these objects, metadata is nothing but data about data, information about the data, not the actual values stored in the data, but about that particular object, general information about that particular object, or metadata about that particular object is what is there in that information schema, and it comes with each and every database you create, always, by default. You cannot do any operations, create any table, or do anything. I think yesterday I was trying to do also to show you guys. I will do it again. Let me select any database and I can go for information schema. Let me create one table, create table, sample tab. Okay. A as number. See, insufficient privilege. Okay. So even my highest role, which is the most powerful role in Snowflake, even that is not allowed or given the privilege to do that on information schema. Okay, so it basically has metadata of all the objects in your account. That is what is information schema. Okay,
Or
and
account or database, Abdul.
yeah, let's read the definition.
Abdul?
Yeah, I'm reading the definition. Just a minute.
Yeah, it should be the information schema are specific to the particular database, right? Because each database will have their own information schema, right? Why I should have the need to access the information of different databases through other databases, right?
Yeah. So I'm just reading the data, the definition now. So it will answer your question. Each database created in your account automatically includes a built-in read-only schema. Okay, read-only schema is important. Named information schema, each database. Okay, the schema contains the following objects: views for all objects contained in the database, as well as views for account level objects, that is non-database objects such as roles, warehouses, and databases. Okay, so it comes with this information, right? Account level as well as your database objects. Okay. So, and it is similar to data dictionary, guys. So if you have worked on traditional databases like Oracle and all, right? So we have data dictionary system views, which gives you metadata information about users, roles, tables, columns, and all that. Okay, and it is based on SQL standard only. Okay, and then there are certain table functions also, which you will not see here. You will only see views here. You will not see under them any table functions. They don't come here. So table functions that you will have to remember some of the important ones, or you can always go to documentation also to see what all table functions are provided in information schema. There are so many. Okay, but we will discuss a few important ones next session. So there are certain table functions also provided to look at the historical and usage of data across your account. Okay, Shiva, it is basically not storing anything as such. This is stored at a common area only somewhere, but each database is given access to that area. Okay, so it is not
Yeah, I got it
storing
now.
redundant data as such.
Yeah, got it. So an information schema, we can access the information about the objects for
Yeah.
the particular database as well
Yeah.
as the higher level, the
Correct.
account level objects such as
Yes.
user roles,
Warehouses
warehouses,
and
right?
other databases also.
Yeah, other databases also, the information about other databases, right?
Yeah.
So
So
whatever the account level objects, that also we can see through every information schema.
yes. So see, I just clicked on this databases view. In my demo DB information schema, I clicked on this database preview data. Okay. So see, I am getting all the database information at the account level, which I have, although I am in demo DB right now. Okay. So, but I'm getting information of all the database. Okay. So, but if I come to tables, so if I come to this tables here, and if I say preview data. So if you see, it's all about DemoDB, which I am in. It's not about any other database. Okay.
Yeah, got it now. So
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, so we will stop here, guys, today. This is about, I gave a brief description of what information schema is. We will be finding those queries, those table functions and all that. So there is a separate, basically I have collected all the SQLs that we do for sessions. So information schema queries are there, quite a bit of them. We will look at them in the next session. So any doubts on information schema before we wind up?
Oh, not my friend, from my side, sir. I'm good after.
Okay. Any other guys or any other doubt, guys? I mean, for any topic till now that we have, studied in the past, right from session 1 to today's session. Any doubt in your mind or something? Okay, I guess we are good then. And yeah, please do watch recordings, guys, and let me know in case you feel you have any doubts. Feel free to WhatsApp me, and I'll try to take out time. I generally do take out time and answer it. Yeah, so don't worry if you're pinging me on weekdays. Don't worry about it. Just feel free to do that. Okay, so we'll wind up now and have a good week ahead, and I'll see you next week. And Venkat, so mostly next week we will start. See, this roles will start, roles and users. Okay, so that time,
Okay.
most of your queries will be answered in a much more detailed way.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, guys, thank you so much and have a good week ahead. Good day, good night.
Same to you.
And
Thank you.
good day to Shiva. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.